Despite the amazing advances in the edtech space, my favourite way of learning something new is still to reach for a book. So here are some of my favourite books for instructional designers. So this list is kind of a culmination of all the little recommendations and pieces of advice that I've been asked for and given over the years about, where to start with researching, whether you're getting into ID or looking to learn something new within the field. So some of the topics are pretty learning theory focused, others are more practical implementation and models. Some have absolutely nothing to do specifically with instructional design, but I think they really help us as instructional designers, as learning professionals, really sort of advance in the craft of sort of behavioural change and changing opinions and getting people to basically do something new or do something better. But let's start with some really obvious books that are ideal for anyone, whether you're getting into the ID field or if you've been here a long time and just haven't seen them yet. So let's kick things off with evidence-informed learning design. This is without doubt one of the biggest impacts on my approach to learning design and learning development as an industry. It walks through, in layman's terms, if you're not a scientist, if you're not a researcher, how to utilise research but also balance it with real-world practicalities and budget considerations. It doesn't just provide you with a model, but real-world examples and just a tremendous amount of insight. This, I would say, is a must-read for everyone in the industry. If we all employed the methods in this book, we would spend a lot less time wasting everyone else's time on things like learning styles, just to kick things off. Next up, and sticking with the sciencey trend, we're going contemporary theories of learning. Now this is much more like a reference book. It's the kind of thing you pull out when you're having a discussion or can't quite remember what something applied to. Worth a read through in the first place to make sure you do understand these things, but definitely one to keep nearby and pull out as and when needed, as opposed to reading in one massive hit on a regular basis. It is not a kind of nail-biting, page-turning thriller. It is a big, nerdy reference book of learning theories, but absolutely fantastic for grounding you in the basics of modern learning design. So I would say probably if you've been in the industry for a long time, this one might not be for you, unless it's an area where you need to work on. But definitely for anyone joining the industry, this is a gold mine of information and really provides you the kind of foundation that everything else sits on. So stepping away from the kind of theories and models for a moment, How People Learn by Nick Shackleton-Jones. Now this book really doesn't need much introduction. It is tremendously famous because, quite frankly, it's brilliant. It's a very different look, and it's kind of promoted this whole debate around courses versus resources, which, as we've discussed before on the channel, I think is slightly misplaced. I think it's not courses versus resources, it's finding the balance of both. You don't just want courses, you don't just want resources, and that is very much what this says. But as the internet does, it oversimplifies everything, and so it became a war between courses and resources. But it is well worth reading this, not just the Facebook highlights or the LinkedIn nuggets. This, unlike the other two so far, is a page turner. You will get excited whilst reading it. It has a lot of aha moments. It relates to a lot of real world things you will probably have experienced if you've been in L&D for a while. If you haven't been in L&D for a while, this is a fantastic primer to the real world implementation of an effective learning strategy or an effective learning intervention. It's very much focused on what you need to do to be effective and have impact, as opposed to having the latest technology involved and being showy and creating these amazing, incredible things that actually don't add any value over a PDF, which would have done the job. Following on from Nick Shackleton-Jones, we have Andy Lancaster and Driving Performance Through Learning. Now this is a meaty book, but it is fantastic, especially as increasingly L&D refocuses from knowledge and compliance into the world of performance. This is really looking at how we impact those real performance indicators within a business. It's about tracing back to KPIs, it's about really solid needs analysis, and it's about considering how we can achieve the behavioural change that we so often promise or want to promise, but can't quite deliver with traditional L&D approaches. Fantastic book, regardless of whether you've been in the industry 5 minutes or 50 years, but I would definitely say if you've got a lot of experience already in the workplace delivering effective learning solutions, this might not reveal too much more to you. On the note of real-world workplace implications, we need to focus far more on gathering data and building a picture of, what is the return on investment of training for the business. And here we have complete training evaluation. This is a fantastic starter on how to start measuring the impact of your training solutions. Whether it's digital, face-to-face, whatever it might be, if you're struggling to figure out what value you're bringing to the business, or if you're bringing value to the business, are you achieving your stated aims? This is a fantastic guide. Now it seems these days you can't really have a list of L&D must-have books without, of course, Map It. Action mapping has become synonymous with the world of instructional design. Every conference you're talking about it, every meeting, maybe someone's using different language, but ultimately this is what they're talking about. Now this is probably the biggest book on this list by quite some way, and it is textbook-esque, let's put it that way. However, it is well worth the read. Not difficult to read at all. It's written fantastically well, broken down well, and ultimately what this does is it really gives you the skills, or at least the opportunity to develop the skills to turn your needs analysis into a much more detailed, granular map of exactly how and when you're going to get people to do X, Y, or Z to achieve a longer-term business goal. This really is how you link what you're doing in your team department, or if it's just you as a freelancer or as a one-person department, it's how you link that to the team, the department, the business achieving its long-term goals. Now this one is a book that I think does not get enough love, Designing for Modern Learning Beyond Addy and Sam. And this is a book looking basically, it looks at the LCD model, but it's also looking at learning clusters. Learning clusters are something that I'm incredibly passionate about, and at Evolve, it's kind of the cornerstone of what we do alongside campaign-based content. The book is not big, but it is absolutely packed with things that will challenge you to think about the way you've always done things, or the way other people have always done things, and why they're quite frankly crap. This book will make you change something about your learning design process. If you only read one book off this entire list, I encourage you to make it this one. Largely because one of the big things you'll get off the back of reading this is the desire to read more, in which case you can just go back through the list and get the rest. Now this next one has absolutely nothing to do with learning as such. It's got more to do with the designs that we put out into the world, whether it's e-learning, posters, videos, whatever it might be, and it's the laws of UX. Now, if every, especially e-learning designer, read this, spent the time to understand this, and followed said laws of UX, there would be far less god-awful looking e-learning in the world. So please, for everyone's sake, for our future careers, for the continuation of our industry, and for the sanity of everyone else, buy this, read it, understand it, stop creating rubbish. The second to last is kind of not a book. It's more of a set of books. 3 books, in fact, all by the same author. Nobody wants to read your shit, Do the Work, and Going Pro. Now these are all written by Steven Pressfield. He is an author, a screenwriter, playwright, does so many things. These are all about improving the copy that you write, whether that be from a storytelling perspective, a marketing perspective, the copy that you use to sell yourself as a business or an individual or a future employee. These helped me really translate that gap between what might be described as creative writing and writing for learning and effect. And in that sense, we have a lot in common with marketing, and that draws very heavily in these. If you only read one of them, No One Wants to Read Your Shit is the best of them, in my opinion, but all three are a powerful primer and development tool for improving how you write for learning. The last book on this list I actually don't have at the moment. I lent it to a friend who's just getting into the industry, and that should kind of give you an idea of how important I think this book is. The book that I'm talking about is all about accessibility. In fact, it's very quickly become my go-to guide and reference book for all things accessibility. It's the kind of thing where if you're having a discussion, you can quickly pull it out, turn to the right page from the index, and there's the answer, or an indication of where you can find the answer. I am, of course, talking about Susie Miller's Designing Accessible Learning Content. It is the book for translating the pretty much arcane language used in the WCAG standards into plain English. As I said, it's become my go-to guide. It's a book I lend out regularly, and it's a book that I think anyone designing learning, and especially digital or online learning, absolutely needs to have sat on their desk to hand for when these challenges arise. So that's my must-have list of books for every instructional designer. There are, of course, hundreds more fantastic books and more coming out all the time. We are an industry that loves to write and publish a book. And as much as I sometimes sort of make fun of that a little bit, it is wonderful because there are so many books out there that simply offer up someone's experience and allows others to learn from it. I think these are often really overlooked development tools because, you know, YouTube's there's an online course for this, there's Udemy for that, there's someone offering a service or a bootcamp or an academy, but actually so much of what is the kind of the core skill set of our industry can be distilled and put into these fantastic volumes. So start there. Before handing your money over to someone else online, start with these books. Start by learning the basics, building that foundation, and then developing yourself. Every book I've mentioned in this video is available on Amazon, and there are links in the description if you fancy picking any of them up. If you think I've missed a really important book, a book that's on your must-read list or that you think I should read, please do let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you again.